Today, I'm sitting down with Mike Konrad, entrepreneur, founder of Aquarius Technologies, and the host of the Reluctant Entrepreneur podcast. Mike didn't originally set out to become a founder. An idea he believed in was rejected by his employer, so he decided to build it himself, starting in a garage and growing into a company that has now been operating for more than 3 decades. Along the way, Mike has become a respected voice in the industry, sharing insights from his journey through his book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, and through conversations with founders and operators on his podcast, also called The Reluctant Entrepreneur. So today, we're talking about where he started, what shaped his thinking, and what it really takes to build something that lasts and to have a meaningful life. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podcast, Mike Konrad.
Thank you, Phil. That's one of the best introductions I think I've had. I appreciate that. Business 30 years ago when I was 4 years old. So
Whoa,
if you can believe that, we're off to a good start.
you've got me. This is a good start. I
Okay.
do
All
believe you.
right.
Mike, I want to kick us straight off. You have interviewed hundreds of entrepreneurs and founders. Why do you think there's not more people getting started in becoming entrepreneurs in this day and age?
Because most people are sane and aren't crazy enough to do what entrepreneurs do. Our government's U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics in the U.K. has a similar government that is basically the government in charge of all things buzzkill, right? They state that 80% of all businesses ultimately fail. That's just a stat, right? An inconvenient truth. In some industries, it's higher. In some industries, it's lower, but the median is 80%. And I think most what I'll refer to as civilians, people who are not entrepreneurs, the sane people who go to work every day and sign the back of the check versus signing the front of the check, are aware that business, or their perception of business, is that it's risky. And there is a huge amount of comfort into knowing someone else is worrying about covering payroll. Someone else is worrying about all the things that one has to worry about in business. And there is a sense, whether it's borne out in reality today or not, but there's a sense of security when you work for a company. And there used to be security. I mean, my parents and probably your parents and certainly grandparents kind of grew up in an era where you got a job. Unless you changed your mind, that was a job for life if you wanted it. That's changed today, but the perception of that is still there. So I think there's so much unknown and uncertainty associated with entrepreneurship, which is true, that humans don't like uncertainty. Business doesn't like uncertainty. No one likes uncertainty. And so entrepreneurship to so many remains this alluring, desirable thing like, oh man, I wish I could be an entrepreneur. Phil, you're so lucky. You're an entrepreneur. Mike, you're so lucky. And it's romanticized, but it's also uncertain. So it kind of is a filter. It keeps many people out. You have to be a little crazy to jump into that pool of uncertainty.
I totally agree. And I think that that's what we've got in common. Me and you, we share the crazies.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing. It's a good crazy. It's a good kind of crazy.
The world needs a little more crazy.
It does.
This kind of crazy, not the crazy we're seeing today. There's enough of that. But certainly, yeah, I think I don't think the world could support itself if everyone thought like me and you, right? It would be a crazy world. It would just be insanity. We need consistency. We need the things that most people bring to the table in this world. And then we need a few crazy people who who draw outside the lines, who can break the rules, who can think beyond status quo. And I think the ratio of people like that versus people who, 9 to 5 rank and file is pretty perfect. And when the wrong personality types gets into entrepreneurship, it's kind of a Freudian thing. It just kind of works itself out. It's a filter, basically.
Let's start with your journey. How did you get yourself into entrepreneurship? I know that you just said earlier that you started when you were 4 years old. Is that really as early as you started?
Well, plus 28 years. Yeah, I started when I was 32. I worked for. I'm in the electronics manufacturing space. So everything that's making this conversation possible, everything that you own that plugs in the wall or has a battery in it, you're welcome. That was built by the industry that my company serves. And
Sincerely, thank you.
You're very welcome. And we apologize as well. I mean, we're on both sides, but we're a tiny little cog in that giant manufacturing wheel. And I started in this industry in 1985. through all sorts of strange circumstances, I found myself in this industry knowing nothing about it. And I was working for an equipment manufacturer within the space I'm in now, and I had an idea for a product. There was a very specific environmental issue going on at that time where a certain chemical that was widely used in electronics manufacturing and other manufacturing processes was about to be banned. It was going to go on to a 10-year phase out, and it was major. And our industry was freaking out because we can't run without it. But the phase out was over a decade. So everyone was freaking out, but they weren't doing anything about it because, well, we still have 10 years. We still have 6 years. We still have, oh my God, we only have 6 months. That's what happened. So during that time, closer to the 10-year mark, I had an idea. I said, well, let's just change the paradigm. Let's build a piece of equipment that doesn't require that type of chemical. Instead of finding an alternate chemical, which everyone was trying to do, I got some ideas. And long story short, I'm skipping a few parts, but long story short, I pitched the idea to my boss, the final idea to my boss, and he wasn't interested. And when I told him, I think he's making a mistake, he looked at me and said one word that started my company. Phil, one word. It was 4 letters long and it began with F. And
Oh.
it wasn't that word, Phil. Come on. Come on,
Okay,
Phil. This is a
I'll
family show
drag
here.
my mind
Family
out the
show.
gutter. Of
No, it wasn't
course,
that
yeah.
word, but it might as well have been. I said, I think you're making a mistake. And he looked at me in the most dismissive way possible. And he goes, fine. I don't care what you think. Fine. And in that nanosecond, at least up here in my head, I started the company. And it took a year after that. But I went home and I was just full of piss and vinegar. And it's like, the world is so unfair. And my wife's like, well, is it a good idea? I think it's a great idea. She goes, well, why are you trying to give it away to your employer? Why don't you just do it yourself? And that's all I needed to hear, Phil. That was like, oh my God, really? Okay. And so I started the ball in motion and here I am.
How fabulous that your wife was behind you as well, because I mean, it's so hard to have a spouse, especially on like an entrepreneurial journey, who's with you from the beginning and with you the whole way. Is there anyone else in your life, do you think, that shaped your ambitions or the way that you see risk in entrepreneurship now?
I grew up pretty nerdy and I was always interested in science and tech. And I was always interested in like famous entrepreneurs. I don't think when I was young and they were kind of my hero types, I can't say I even knew the word entrepreneur. I certainly didn't know how to spell it, but I don't even think I knew how to pronounce it. I just knew that these people created something out of nothing, or they ran big companies that I've heard of. And to me, a celebrity sighting would be a CEO. And, I would get all giddy if I saw, a CEO that I recognized. The fact that I recognized them means that there was some level of celebrity to them, at least in my head. And I've always been attracted to that. But I never thought, I didn't have a dream of being one. Just like people are attracted to celebrity types, and you're mentioned off air that, you're an actor.
Yeah.
And if you got a big gig on your Channel 4 or BBC or on the West End or major Hollywood type thing, people would be attracted to you who don't even know you. Yet most of the fans don't want to be actors themselves. The same thing with me. I was attracted to the concept of entrepreneurship. I didn't have a desire I didn't know anything about business. I don't know anything about acting formally. I think every entrepreneur is an actor in many ways, but formally,
Sure.
I'm not trained as an actor. So it's kind of the same thing. I was just attracted to that genre of a slice of life that I just found fascinating and still do.
Is there like a belief, do you think, that you're either formed in an early life or maybe that you're still working on now that's shaping or guiding what you're building? And if so, what would it be?
I've always felt, and I didn't have a place to express this feeling when I was younger, but I always felt that business should be purpose driven over product or service driven. And I'm attracted to companies that give me that vibe. Who knows if they really are, but where there's a mission more than and a purpose bigger than the product or service. And it shows up in ways that young people today identify with companies that they like to buy from. It's turned into more of a tribe mentality. Like Apple Computer is a good example. They've changed a little bit since the loss of Steve Jobs, but people don't just buy a Mac. They join the tribe, right? They camp in
Yeah.
front of the store to buy the latest iPhone an hour into its release that has maybe 2 megapixels more than last year's iPhone, and that's it. They'll camp for 4 days. They wear their merch. Nike and other companies, Patagonia, all clothing companies, other companies, we will gladly walk around and wear their merch. My wife just bought a Volkswagen, and they gave me this giant Stanley with a VW thing on it. And
Yeah.
I'm walking around with this, I like her car. It's cool. But now I'm kind of promoting their products. I mean, people join tribes today. And I think that's when a company is purpose driven and they identify more than just their product. Um, I've always found that very attractive. And when I started the company, that was my mission to have a purpose greater than product and have a reason for being in business more than just selling big expensive machines to people.
Well, let's talk about what you're building now and what your purpose is and who your tribe is. In your own words, what are you building?
Ironically, our machines don't produce anything. You don't put raw materials in one end and out comes a product from the other end. Pretty much many pieces of equipment in the electronics manufacturing space actually build something. We have machines that print with a stencil, print the solder paste, the raw solder paste onto a bare board. And then we have other machines that put the components on top of that raw solder paste. And we have other machines that solder, that reflow, that heat up giant ovens that solder the components to the board. Then we have machines like ours that take the board, run it through a very specific process to make it ultimately more reliable. So we are a value added. Our machines don't build anything. You don't, put a bunch of stuff in and something comes out that you then sell. We take our customer's product and make it work better. That's all. It looks the same. You can't tell on the outward, visually, you can't tell. It's changed, but we add reliability through putting it through a very specific process. Where we identify with customers, or more importantly, customers identify with us, is we're problem solvers. We make their product last. We keep them out of court. We keep them out of trouble. We keep them out of the press. And we allow them to sleep at night. And the reason why our products are working right now is partially in a tiny little minuscule, almost immeasurable way, but measurable to a certain extent, is the process that we put it through. That's why it's working today. And that's why it's not glitching out after 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years. That's part of our mission, to make the world a safer, better place and to be as environmentally responsible as possible. And we started based on an environmental initiative. We created a product that didn't destroy the planet and totally avoided the chemical in question and any subsequent chemical that would have followed it. We just don't use it and achieve a result better than the traditional way of doing it that's now banned.
Well, I'm going to jump back to something you said earlier. When I kind of started in business, I always found it hard to say when people say, "What do you do?" To say, "Oh, I'm an entrepreneur." It's a hard question to answer.
Yeah. If you want to clear a room, Phil, if you want to clear a room at a cocktail party, just start telling people what you do. And next thing you know, the room just starts evaporating. People just start
leaving
exiting. Yeah. Yeah.
The word that you use of being a problem solver is actually the reality. And I think that is the word that best sums up what I do and most likely what you do. The word entrepreneur, I hate saying it. I almost cringe internally using the word entrepreneur, but problem solver is a better definition of what I think I do and what you do. Is there something when you started your podcast and your book, who were you trying to solve a problem for when you launched your podcast and your book as a problem solver?
Yeah, great question. The reason I wrote the book, first of all, I wrote the book over a few years. I had no intention of publishing it, Phil. I was doing a lecture circuit at universities, speaking to graduating engineering students on the subject of entrepreneurship. And it was basically a collection of all the bonehead mistakes I've ever made and what I've learned from it. And as I started with more than 30 years of history behind me, I've forgotten more than I remembered, and forgotten more things than I remembered. But as I started doing this lecture circuit, I started remembering more and more anecdotes. I started writing them down, and then I started writing little narratives just for myself to connect all the dots of all these stories. And then at some point, I'm like, it looks like I'm writing a book. So I wrote the book and gave it to a friend to read. And they're like, man, you got to publish this. This is cool. I'm like, yeah, whatever. So eventually I did, because I was kind of encouraged to. But my intent wasn't to really sell books. My intent was to help others learn from all the mistakes I made. Let's not let them be in vain. I mean, I came out the other side quite well, but maybe, I would love to read something like this. There's all these how-to books out there. Mine is a how not to book. So maybe it can be helpful. One thing I noticed, my observation in the civilian's view of entrepreneurship is it's highly romanticized. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. Maybe you have too, Phil. Mike, you're so lucky. Phil, you're so lucky. You're your own boss. You can write your own checks. You can take all the time off you want. You can buy things and charge it to the company. I mean, my God, wow, I wish I was like you. And that's the farthest. All those statements are the farthest from the truth, at least in the early days. I'm my own boss. Really? If you work for another company, you've got one person you report to, and they've got one person they report to. As a business owner, you're the bottom of the pyramid and an upside down pyramid. You report to your customers, your vendors, your employees, the government, the weather, tech changes, the economy. I mean, you name it. You're the bottom of the pile, and you have to report to everybody. And yeah, you can write your own check. Sure, absolutely. Day one, write yourself $1 million check, $1 million check. You can't cash it, but you can write as many checks as you want. So business entrepreneurship is highly romanticized. And I think that's one reason why statistically our Department of Buzzkill states that 80% of businesses fail. I don't think business is inherently risky, as 80% failure rates would suggest. I think 100% of the 80% of businesses that fail for the exact same reason, that the founder of the business failed to scale themselves to the appropriate level of the business. They got it started. They got it from level 1 to level 2, maybe to level 3, maybe to level 4, and then they ran out of a bag of tricks. And they are convinced that what gets them from A to B fails them from B to C. Or no, they're convinced that whatever gets them from A to B will take them from B to C and subsequent levels. So the reason I do the podcast and write the book is a very Pollyannish view, big audacious goal. Like maybe if people are aware of that, of the mistakes that every entrepreneur makes, everyone from Jobs to Musk to, Edison, all of them, you name them, Tesla, Nikolai Tesla. We've all made those exact same bonehead mistakes. If we can just put those out there ahead of time, maybe we can move the odds a little bit from 80-20 to maybe 75-25, maybe 20-80. I mean, who knows? And maybe be a little filter. Maybe not everyone should do this. And maybe those that think they shouldn't should. So it's just to put a real raw, unfiltered view of what entrepreneurship is really like, not to discourage, but to encourage the right types of people to do it. And for those who are in it, about to throw in the towel, about to say, oh my God, Phil, I can't do this anymore. I'm out of money. I'm out of energy. I'm out of determination. I'm just wiped. To know that that's the point when things change for the better. It's like boot camp. The drill sergeant has to break you and then rebuild you into the person they want you to be. The business gods are very much our drill sergeant. It's the same thing. They're gonna break you down. They're gonna go, yeah, you think you know everything, Phil? Yeah, you don't know anything. And then they're gonna rebuild you. And that's the point where people give up. And my goal with the show is to go, you're so close to getting out of that hedge maze. It's just around a corner. It's just 2 inches to the left or to the right. Don't stop. Just everyone does it. It's not you. It's the system. It's the curriculum you signed up for. It's normal. Keep going. Those are the big, audacious, who knows how I'll ever accomplish that goal for the show and for the book.
That's so important, because the more people I've spoken to doing this podcast, and people like yourself, everyone has the same message, which ultimately is resilience and grit. You've just got to keep going. Even if you don't know the way, even if the way's not clear, just keep moving and allow things to unfold in front of you, and great things will come and help you. But when you wrote the book, there's a really great entrepreneur who's actually Australian but based in London called Daniel Priestley, and he's kind of got a view that everyone has a book in them, and more than anything, even if nobody reads your book, it'll help align your own thinking. Did writing your own book make you a better entrepreneur at what you do?
Oh, 100%, Phil. When you're living it in real time, you're just dealing with situations daily, hourly, minute by minute. You're slaying the dragon, on to the next dragon, slay the dragon, on to the next dragon. And there were some really crappy things that I had to go through when I built the business. My former employer, who said no to the idea, sued me and tried to get the product from me. And that took 100% of my startup money away. 100% of my tiny little bootstrap startup fund went away in the first 3 months. And it was supposed to last me a year. Went away in the first 3 months because it turns out lawyers don't work for free. And as much as I wanted them to, quite the opposite. I work for free so I could pay the lawyer. Lawyers. Anyway, it was hard. It was so hard. As I wrote the book, I started noticing, wait a minute, there was a script here that I didn't realize. I was in a play. I was in a tragic rom-com, romanticized business and scorned lovers. I mean, all that stuff. I don't mean that in a physical romantic way, but just with the industry and with my business. And everything started having meaning. I'm like, oh my God, that's where I learned this. When I look back with altitude and perspective and hindsight, everyone's got 2020 hindsight.
Sure.
I was able to truly appreciate the challenges that I faced and even the failures that I made. I made plenty of them because I realized I could see from this end of the timeline, I could see how those were change agents. I could see how I like to refer to the business gods, and I don't mean that spiritually. I just mean that kind of metaphorically. But I could see I was given advance warning. I was given clues that you should really not do things that way, Mike. You should really do things this way. Little shoves in a direction, and I would resist it. And then boom, big calamity would happen, a big giant mistake that was super costly that almost killed us. And then I would learn. And looking back, I'm like, why didn't I listen? I knew that. I knew that. These things all happened. It's like a tremor before a big earthquake, or people who study volcanoes know when they're going to erupt within a certain timeline, that all the signs are there. I ignored the signs because I was just too smart for that. And so it gave me a lot of reverse perspective, or I guess that's just perspective. So it was so valuable for me to write. That's why I kept writing. I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to publish this. No one's going to be interested in this. And it's a little embarrassing to admit the things I'm admitting, but it really helped me gain clarity and change the way I listen for signs now. I don't wait for the building to be on fire before I jump, off the ledge. I can see the signs. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, business gods are talking to me. I better listen. I'm not going to wait until everything falls apart before I do something right.
Well, let's talk about that briefly. So I would call that moment an oh shit moment.
Totally.
In business and entrepreneurship, it happens all the time, and it's terrible when it comes. Have you refined a method that you have now honed that you think could be helpful for listeners, that now when a no shit moment comes, how do you tackle it? What have you learned?
Every time I had to embrace something that felt scary or uncomfortable or wacky, like a different concept, a solution to a problem that is way outside my comfort zone, I would resist it. I would have too much fear, and I worked with a mentor that would give me the wackiest advice, a sage when it comes to business, but she's a little wacky. I call her Yoda, which she doesn't appreciate.
Is she little and green?
No, she's not little and green, but the stuff that she
helpful.
says sounds batshit crazy. It's just
Sure.
like Yoda, in the way Yoda delivers, everything's kind of backwards, kind of dyslexic, language.
Yeah.
Like, for example, she said, the company wasn't doing too well. And I'm just like, I don't know what we're doing. We need more sales. We need whatever. She goes, if you want to sell more product, just stop talking about your product, Mike. You spend way too much time talking about your product. I'm like, well, that makes no sense. Thank you,
Yeah.
Yoda. That's okay. Talk about product too much, you do. It's like, what? How can we sell product without talking about our product? That's what we're selling. And it turned out she was 100% right.
Wow.
And I refer to burning building moments. So the building's on fire. I'm standing on the window ledge. I have two choices. I can have a 100% certainty of dying in the fire. The flames are coming toward me. Or I can have a 0.0001% chance of surviving the fall if a giant flatbed truck full of pillows happens to be driving by at the exact time, like a stuntman jumping out into an airbag. Hey, it could happen, right? It could happen.
It could happen.
They're almost equal chances of doom, but one's slightly better. So I will obviously jump out of the window without hesitation. That's what happened when I decided, okay, you know what? We're just going to stop all this crazy advertising. We're going to stop exhibiting in trade shows. We're not going to spam anyone with email. We cancel all our print ad contracts, digital banner ad contracts. We're just going to do something different. That was like, here comes the flames. Just jump. And it turned out there was a flatbed truck full of pillows, metaphorically. And that's happened to me so many times where I've had absolutely no choice but to make a very uncomfortable decision, which then didn't even become uncomfortable. It just became, how quick can I do it? I now have been trained through experience to trust the process. I don't wait for the building to catch fire, because it will. The business gods can be a little twisted. They will keep turning up the heat, figuratively, until they get you to move. And now I can see the signs. I trust the process. I try really, really hard to take fear off the table. And what's the best decision? Well, I'd love to do this, but that's too risky. That's too scary. Like, okay, well, you're Superman. You have a superpower. Make all the fear go away. Well, yeah, if I was fearless, I would do that. Just do that. And it sounds easy. It sounds like, oh, come on, Mike, easier said than done. Yes, 100%. Easier said than done. But it's happened to me so many times, Phil, that I would prefer not to go through the pain to ultimately make the right decision. Let's just make the right decision and skip the pain part.
I
And
agree. I
it has
agree.
never failed me.
I'm so pleased that that's the case, because I think there's an actor, talking about it briefly, who I love. It's called Anthony Hopkins. I'm very sure that you'll have heard of him. And he
You
says
still
a
hear
phrase.
the lambs, Clarice. Yes.
That's the man.
I can't get that character out of my head.
So he's got a phrase that goes, "Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid." And I think it applies to absolutely everything that you do in life. And he talks about that when he did the moments in Silence of the Lambs. He was like, should I do it? Should I not? And he just had a little voice and says, just do it.
Totally
And I think
improv.
that there is a moment in all of us where you know the right decision, even though you're scared of the decision. Sometimes you just got to take the jump before you see what you're jumping into. So I think that's really important. And with that in mind, what do you think is harder in business today? Is it starting, scaling, or surviving?
Yes, on all three.
They're all easy, they're all hard.
Well, that's a cop-out answer. It depends on the personality. For me, starting was easy. Starting was like, because I was ignorant. I was arrogant. I had a huge ego. I had a very poor assessment of risk. Those were pretty much the traits I brought to the table to start my business. I had a good technical acumen, but everything else I didn't know anything about. Thank God, Phil. Because if someone would have told me back then when I was 32, hey, Mike, 80% of all businesses fail, and they require about 10 times more capital than you think it will, I probably wouldn't have done it. To my regret today, I would have been too afraid to do it. I would have had imposter syndrome. Like, what am I doing in this space? Right. So, but I was too stupid to know that. And I thank God for that now. So startup was easy for me. I think it's traditionally one of the harder things to do because people sit on the fence. They sit on that window ledge with the fire coming behind them and they just refuse to jump and they just get consumed by the fire, which is the system of employment. I think for me, the hardest part, I was a survivor, clearly. I'm 34 years later, and the business is still here. I haven't killed it yet, try as I might. So I'm definitely a survivor. I think scaling was by far my hardest part, learning to scale, because the business scales usually with or without the founder scaling. And that's where businesses ultimately fail. When the founder and the leaders of that business are not scaling their skills to the appropriate level of the business. That's where it always happens. That's why statistically 30% of all businesses fail in the first year. Statistically 50% of all businesses fail within 5. And statistically 80% of all businesses fail within 15 years. Those are just facts. Why are those numbers facts? Because by end of year 1, the business has grown a little bit and 30% of their founders no longer have the same business they started with, and they don't have the skills for 1-year-old businesses, and it fails. Half of them can't go past 5 because by the time a typical business gets to 5 years, they've gone from A to B to C to G, and they've run out of E skills. And they're convinced that look, it's gone 5 years. It's been great. It's been hard, but I'm still here 5 years later. I'm good at business. And then the rules change. They don't get the memo. They think, well, wait a minute, we've been through this before. We'll just keep doing this because this worked before. We had a magic wand, we had a potion, a magic phrase, and all of a sudden their wand, the potion, the phrase just stopped working because the scale is now different. The rules have changed, and they haven't upped their game either personally or through acquisition of talent suitable for that stage of the business. So I think that's just what happens. So scaling, I think, is that's what kills most businesses. Surviving, yeah, I think that's, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're truly an entrepreneur, survival it just goes with the territory. It's there.
I agree. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that last part about finding the people who maybe have the skills that you don't, because as much as I'm brave, I'm not bright. I wish I was brighter. I think most people in America assume if you're English, you're clever, but I am living proof that is not true.
The accent fools us. Yeah, you're right. In fact, sometimes people will get cast and they'll have to fake a British accent just because they're supposed to be like a doctor or a psychiatrist or something, right? So it's
or
better. It's better if they're British.
So I guess, which skills did you personally have to learn, and which bits did you find most helpful to outsource? I know this will be completely different for every person. Like for
Yeah.
me, the number side and the accounting side and all that was really difficult. So finding a good accountant really helped me grow. What about
Yeah.
yourself? What skills did you find you had to learn?
Well, I didn't know how to read a financial statement when I started the company.
Same.
I looked at an income statement. I looked at my P&L. That was pretty easy. And then the balance sheet, I'm like, what's a balance sheet? No, a balance sheet, balance B sheet S, BS. It's a BS sheet because to me, it was a
Yeah.
giant buzzkill sheet. It was like, wait a minute. The income statement shows I'm making some profit and the balance sheet shows we're dying. Like I don't like the balance sheet. I don't want to look at it. Cash flow projection. I don't want to look at cash flow projection. It might as well just give me a crystal ball, go to a palm
Yeah.
reader or something. I didn't know how to read that. Now I can hire that and I did, but I still didn't know how to read it. And I
Yeah.
didn't want to because it was too scary. I was frightened by it. I was driving a NASCAR on a track blindfolded. Just I'll feel I'll feel the sides of the track when I hit the wall and correct, right? And all I was doing was bouncing off walls. So I didn't have that mainly because I was fearful. I understand math. I can totally learn it. I didn't want to learn it. That's even worse. I didn't know the difference between growth and scale. I thought the solution to every problem was we just need more business. We
Sure.
just need more
More
business.
sales. More
It turns
sales.
out more sales. Yeah. And I started focusing, there's all these KPIs, key performance indicators that people
Sure.
face. There's, it's a dashboard of things going on in the business. And although I didn't consider it that formally then, but there were certain things I would always look at. And when cash got low, I was a really good salesperson. There's no one like the company owner, just sell what the company does. And because people feel the passion and all that. So I was great at bringing in sales, not profitable sales, Phil, but I could bring in money. We pay our employees every week, every Thursday. So Wednesdays were always sleepless nights for me. So I would, my accountant would go, Mike, we need, $30,000 by Wednesday night so we can put it in the bank so the check's clear on Thursday. So I would work all week to get that money in to cover payroll. None of it profitable, but I didn't care. That's not my problem today. My problem today is I need cash in the bank at any cost.
Sure.
So I would easily get it at the expense of profit. And then when I started working on profit, well, how do we improve profit? Well, cut corners. It would affect the reliability of our equipment or the level of service we're providing. So whenever I focused on one specific problem, it was at the expense of every other problem. And when I was 30, I became a pilot. I got my pilot's license. I don't fly
Wow.
anymore. But I was flying there for a while. And every pilot will tell you this, whether they're flying sevens for British Airways or little Cessna 172s like I flew. You're trained as a pilot all the time to do three things, all the time: aviate, navigate, and communicate. And one of my ghoulish pleasures in life is to read NTSB reports, National Transportation Safety Board. That's our government agency that figures out why planes crashed and
Wow.
anything that moves, trains, whatever. So I love reading those reports because I'm a road warrior. I'm on the road all the time, I'm flying around the world. And I don't know why I'm attracted to what caused it to crash. In almost every case, it's pilot error. And in almost every case where it's pilot error, it's the flight crew stopped doing one of those three things. They were so obsessed trying to solve this one problem, they stopped aviating, or they stopped communicating, or they stopped navigating, and they hit the mountain and that they didn't see because their head was down in the instruments trying to figure something out. And I think in business, the same philosophy applies. There is an equivalent to aviate, navigate, communicate in running your business. And to me, that translates to instead of chasing cash, and instead of chasing profit, and instead of chasing market share, whatever KPI you're looking at, make great decisions. Just make the best decisions you can possibly make by any measure. And cash flow, profit, market share, name your KPI, they will come. They will come. And instead of saying, I want to grow 20% this year, where'd that number come from, right? Okay, I want to grow 20% this year because I had to tell a bank something. They were demanding to know what our growth was going to be. I would get that 20% and our profit would go down exponentially. It's like, okay, that makes no sense. So now I don't worry about any of those KPIs in a direct sense. We work on making great decisions. If we don't get the KPIs we wanted after that, we tweak our decision making strategy and we make better decisions until the results come. So to me, cash flow and profit and all those things are scorecards for the decision tree.
Yeah.
We don't try and adjust the scorecard. We don't erase a number and write a better number in. We work on the game. If you're a golfer, you work on your golf game, and the scorecard reflects it. And we don't work on how can I write a different number in my card. You work on playing better. And to me, business is the same way, but most business owners will focus on the scorecard more than the game that the scorecard reflects. That's the crazy world according to Mike, but that's the way I think.
It's a good way to think. I think it makes complete sense, and you've described it perfectly. If you mentioned earlier that you had a mentor, I also have mentors or people that are way further down the line than me that I use. If a young person came to you with, £50,000 or say $100,000, which is probably more impactful, how would you guide them in the modern day economy? What would you tell them to do? What would be your first move as advice?
Keep the money someplace safe, stick it in a money market account for now, and forget you have it for a moment. What's your idea? I would ask them, what's their idea? What's their plan? What's their level of growth strategy? How much passion do they have? Watch podcasts like this, like mine, like so many others. Get as many great books on business that you can. One I recommend is Jim Collins' Good to Great. Excellent book. He also wrote Built to Last, another excellent book. Talk to people who are entrepreneurs. Get counseling from them, get advice from them, and then make it yours. And just let that money sit and earn a little bit of interest or whatever. And understand that what you're about to do before you invest that money in your business, which I almost guarantee you won't be enough anyway. It's enough to think that you're a rich person, but it goes hyper fast. Go in with both eyes wide open. Ask yourself some real soul-searching questions. Are you a person with natural determination? Are you a person with grit? Are you a MacGyver person, meaning that, that show where he always created inventions to get out of trouble? Do you have a lot of gut feeling? How much do you listen to your inner gut talking to you, your intuition? What's your support network around you? Does your partner, spouse, or whatever, are they in 100%? Because they will be. They'll be drug in, and you're going to need all the support you can. What's your social life like? What's your commitment to time? Do you have kids you have to take to, a soccer practice or football practice daily? Because you're not going to be able to do that the first several years. Really get an eye-opening view of what it's going to be like. And then if you're still stoked about it, great. And to me, there are two types of people who start businesses. Those that start a business already with an exit strategy in mind. Yeah, I'm going to create this new widget here, and I'm going to build it for $1 and sell it for $10, and then we're going to get seed rounds, we're going to get VC money, and then we're going to do an IPO, and then I'm going to buy a Lamborghini and an island. And yeah, okay, well, that happens. There are unicorns out there. That does happen. People do win the lottery too. It happens every day. Not many, but enough to say people do win.
Yeah.
To me, I would caution someone that way. Those are a dime a dozen people. They're chasing the outcome, not the journey. And to me, it's all about the journey. And the journey involves a product or a service. What's your product? What's your service? If there's passion for the product, more than passion to run a company, that's going to help you. It really will. I can't tell you how many people I know that say, it's my dream to own a company. Like, awesome. That's great. What would you do? Oh, I have no idea. I'm just waiting for the right idea. All right. Well, you're going to stand at that train station for a long time. The train's not coming. Hope it's a comfortable bench and they sell coffee because it's not coming. To me, the companies that have a greater chance of succeeding, the founder has a passion for a product, and the only way to launch that product, to get it out there, is to start a company because no one else will do it. No one else sees what you see. That, to me, is an indicator, not 100% accurate, but it's an indicator that there's a chance here because the passion to get the product out is so great. They're willing to do what they normally would not have done, like maybe learn some new skills, maybe think outside the box, maybe MacGyver their way into stuff, maybe draw outside the lines and break the rules enough to force the industry to listen to you. That's what it takes. It takes all those things and more.
Mike, I'm going to kick us off just with some quick fire questions. There is no right or wrong answer. Just instinctively go with what feels right to you. Would you rather scale fast or build slowly?
Build slowly. Scaling too fast will run you out of cash very quickly.
Would you rather control everything or empower other people?
Ultimately empower other people, for sure.
Would you rather safe growth or taking a big, bold risk?
In the early part of the company, it's no guts, no glory, no pressure, no diamonds, huge risks, right? As you start to scale, a little bit more measured growth would be more appropriate.
And finally, what's more important to you, a profit or making an impact?
Making an impact. Profit's important, obviously, because you can make an impact for a longer period of time if you sustain a profit. But to me, any purpose-driven company is impact first. Profit is a result of that.
It's been such a pleasure talking with you this morning. I think that you've got such a lived ethos of everything that you say, you've lived by. It's breathed experience in everything that you do. And I find that inspirational. That's why I love listening to your podcast and reading bits of your book. In this country, we say like the foundations or the plans, but in your country, you would say blueprints, as if you were building a house. So when all of the blueprints fade, what is it, Mike, that you want to be remembered for building?
I'm a big believer in make a difference in the world. However you imprint that based on your skill set, your talent, make a difference in the world, impact someone's life better. And I would hope that my grandkids will talk about an ancestor they had that started something that impacted the world for the better. That would be my dream, to have the company continue long after me to make what we use every day more reliable, and to do it in a manner that makes the world a little cleaner than when we got it, and to have lives positively impacted by it. That would, wherever I am at that point, whether I'm looking up or looking down or whatever, I would hope that would be my legacy, that I left something behind way, way, way bigger than just me.
And I think that you will. And I think that that's clear in what you've documented in your book and in your podcast. And if they're just hearing from you now by listening to this, how could people reach out to you? Where would people find your book, or how could they listen to your podcast?
Well, the easiest central hub, I'm in a lot of things, so is MikeKonrad.com. Just remember, that's Konrad with a K. Thanks, Dad. Yeah, Konrad with a K. So MikeKonrad.com is the best way to find me. And from there, if you want to get real geeky, you could follow one of my geeky, nerdy, electronics-based podcasts that I host called Reliability Matters. Certainly in this context, Reluctant Entrepreneur, that's available. The information from the book is there, but the podcast where I talk to business founders and hear their horror stories and burning building moments and all of that. I think hearing the journey of other entrepreneurs is so valuable in giving you insight into what it might be like, with your journey.
Yeah.
So that's the best way. MikeKonrad.com is the best single portal to find me. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn. Just search me out on LinkedIn. There's not too many Mike Konrads with a K, and they'll find me.
What we'll do is I'll drop all of that information down in the show notes so people can click straight through to you. And finally, Mike, just before we go, what does the next 12 months look like for you in terms of business, in terms of books, in terms of podcasts? What have you got coming up?
Well, I continue to do 2 podcasts. That takes a lot of my time. Even though I still own my business, they now pay me to stay away, which, Phil, is a brilliant plan. There's a huge ROI attached to that. But I don't run the company anymore. I still own it, and I'm still closely tied to it, invested in it. But my team runs the company way better, frankly, than I ever did. And I'm the guy that just kind of creates the content. So I go around the world and I give lectures, at conferences and symposia to engineers on the subject of the reliability of electronics. And then I also speak at universities about entrepreneurship. That keeps me pretty busy. I've got a pretty active vacation life. I'm paying back my wife for the years of sacrifice she made by allowing me to take this journey. And it turns out her payment of choice are cruises. So we do a lot of cruising around the world. And so I'm kind of a road warrior. I'm in the happiest place I've been in my life because my business is going well and without me. And I get to do just what I love to do. When you start a business, you have to do 10 things in a day, one of which you love, 9 of which suck, but you have to do it because you're the only person. And I've gotten to the point now after all these, 3+ decades that I only do what I love. And my team loves everything I hate. So it's perfect. They don't want to do what I do. They don't want to be in front of a camera or a lectern and, travel around the world. They want to be home because their kids are playing Little League and, they're involved in life, right? And God love them. That's so cool. I'm involved in my life and they're quite different. I get to do just what I love to do. They're doing what they love to do. It's mutually beneficial. So I'm very much in my happy place, and my wife gets a whole lot of apology cruises for all the times that I was not there for her and my daughter, and I was working over through the night, you know, 30 hours in a row, and so we're kind of turning the clock back on that, enjoying the fruits of all of that sacrifice that my entire family made, and me, of course.
Mike, thank you so much for your time today. And I think more importantly, just thank you for all of the contributions that you've made to even people like me on totally the different side of the world who've listened to your podcast, who've read your book, and you're laying down a blueprint or track to follow, or as we said today, maybe not follow. It's really brave putting all of that honest information out into the world to make a positive impact. So keep cruising, stay healthy. And yeah, I hope we can keep in touch.
Thank you, Phil. I'll look forward to that. And thanks for what you do. You're really paying it forward here. You're helping a lot of people. Keep up that great work.
We'll try. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Let's stay in touch. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Phil. Bye-bye.